Hey everyone! If you listened to our season 14 finale, you know that we are taking a small break from our regular episodes while my co-host, Leah, is adjusting to new mom life. So in the meantime, we will be delivering a handful of Hasty History episodes. If you are not familiar with Hasty Histories, these are bonus episodes that we are calling No Nonsense, Crash Course, Cram Session, History Lessons. So there will be no cocktail segment, no ads, and no bloopers. This is just a quick download of some heavy history content. If you enjoy longer podcast episodes with lots of back and forth conversation over unique cocktails, we recommend checking out our regular #history episodes, which drop weekly during our regular seasons on our regular feed. But as for now, let's get to this week's topic. This week, we will be discussing something that I'm not sure many people know about. No. I know you all know about the Twilight Zone. But this week's topic is about something obscure, horrendously tragic, and not well known that occurred during the production of the Twilight Zone movie. This week, we will be discussing the tragic deaths of adult actor Vic Morrow and 2 children, Myca Dinh and Renee Shin-Yi Chen, as well as the injuries of 6 others. This tragedy occurred as a result of an accident that happened in 1982 on the set of Twilight Zone, the movie. You see, on July 23rd of that year, director John Landis told the operator of a helicopter that was being used on set to hover dangerously low over the ground in order to capture a particular scene. This, amongst other violations, caused the helicopter to get caught in the pyrotechnic explosions, leading to the horrific deaths of Morrow, Lei, and Chen. What's possibly worse is that of those on set that night, watching the horrendous tragedy occur, were the parents of both of the children. This awful incident would lead to Landis becoming the first ever film director to be charged with a death on the set of a feature film. For nearly a decade after the incident, a slew of civil and criminal actions against those involved would take place, which would eventually lead to a very unsatisfying and disappointing end. I don't like going into gruesome details on this podcast. I don't think that's what our podcast is for. If you want more gruesome details, there are true crime podcasts for that. But I will be very minorly discussing the causes of deaths of those involved because I think it's important to the story. That's a trigger warning for anyone that may need it. I can tell you that this was personally a really difficult episode for me to research and record. All right, let's get into this tragic event. I think let's start with a little background on this film. We're all very familiar with the Twilight Zone television series, which ran from 1959 to 1964. In 1983, a movie aptly named Twilight Zone, the movie, was released as somewhat of a remake of the original TV series. The movie featured 4 different stories directed by 4 different people: Joe Dante, George Miller, Steven Spielberg, and John Landis. Of the stories featured, they were remakes from the television series, with the exception of Landis' story, which was a partial remake segment specifically rewritten for the film. This particular segment, the first segment featured in the film, is titled Time Out. This segment follows a character named Bill Connor, played by the late actor Vic Morrow, who is a bigot, mad that his Jewish coworker received a promotion that he was hoping for. After firing off several racial slurs, blaming any and all minorities for the problems of America, he stumbles out of a bar and finds that he has been transported to the past. Back to World War II, specifically, in Nazi-occupied France. Mistaken for a Jewish man by SS officers, Connor is chased by the Nazis until he finds himself transported to a different time and place in history, Alabama, in the 1950s. Here, again, his ethnicity is mistaken, this time for a black man, and he's being chased by the KKK. Before he can be captured, he is transported again, this time to Vietnam in the midst of the Vietnam War, which, if you have picked up on the moral of the story, you can take a guess that here, Connor is mistaken yet again to be a member of Viet Cong, and he is being chased by American soldiers. Just as a grenade that has been thrown at him detonates, Connor finds himself in Nazi-occupied France once again, where he has officially been captured by the SS and is thrown into a train where he's being transported alongside other Jews to a concentration camp. We all get the moral of the story, right? Don't be a racist. But after Warner Brothers executives read the original script, they found the main character to not be sympathetic enough to the American audience. To combat this, director Landis decided last minute to add something more to the script. He decided that the Connor character, while in Vietnam, would discover 2 Vietnamese orphans that were being shot at by a U.S. Army helicopter and rescues them. Surely that makes him a more sympathetic character, right? Unfortunately, this is not what would happen. For starters, remember how I mentioned in the introduction that Landis had been responsible for violating multiple laws in the course of directing this film? One major law he violated was child labor laws. You see, the 2 children he hired to play the Vietnamese orphans, 7-year-old Myca Dinh Lê and 6-year-old Renee Shin-Yi Chen, were hired without the necessary special permits. In fact, because it was illegal in the state of California to have these children working in these conditions and to have them working at night, such as at the time of the fatal accident, 2:30 in the morning, the children's parents were instead paid under the table in cash. It's believed that the children would have been rushed off set by the set fire safety officer had anyone other than the director and producers known that the children were to be involved in a scene involving a helicopter and explosions. But according to even their own parents, they had no idea the children would be placed in such a dangerous position in the course of filming. I am now going to discuss the details of the actual incident, and like I shared earlier, some of the details are gruesome, even without going into significant detail, and it can be really difficult to listen to, and honestly for me to even say. So here we go. On July 23rd, 1982, the particular scene that we discussed was being filmed in Indian Dunes, a movie ranch located in Santa Clarita, California. Actor Morrow, per the script, was carrying Lê and Chen through a shallow river as the American soldiers were chasing after them in a helicopter that was hovering only 25 feet from the ground. Now, even those of us that are not actors or do not spend time on film sets know that a scene as dangerous as this would typically have been shot in multiple takes. Perhaps a few shots with just the helicopter, perhaps a few close-ups of the actors, followed then by a few shots with stunt doubles, then perhaps some other separate shots with the pyrotechnic explosions. But no, Landis was insistent that it all be filmed in one take. So that's what they did, and it ended tragically. The helicopter had a difficult time navigating through the pyrotechnics, but with no communication between the pilot and the pyrotechnic technician, the technician was not aware of the difficulties and continued to detonate pyrotechnics back to back. These explosions would cause the helicopter to, quote, spin out of control, unquote, where it would eventually crash to the ground. One of the helicopter blades decapitated Morrow and Lê. Chen was crushed by the helicopter itself. And remember, the children's parents were there on set at the time of the accident and saw the whole thing. Landis, along with others involved with the segment, would be brought to court in a nearly decade-long civil and criminal battle. In court, testimony would reveal that when a production manager said of the explosions, quote, "That's too much, let's get out of here," unquote, Landis responded for the helicopter to, quote, "Get lower, lower," unquote. There was even testimony that Landis was very much aware of the dangers of this particular scene and said in response to someone mentioning the dangers, he said almost as a joke, quote, we may lose the helicopter, unquote. After a 9-month-long criminal trial, all were acquitted on manslaughter charges, but the families would eventually collect millions in civil court. Steven Spielberg, who, like I mentioned early on, was also involved in this film, was not on set the night of the fatal accident. Following the incident, he broke off his friendship with Landis immediately. He was quoted as saying of the accident, quote, "No movie is worth dying for. I think people are standing up much more now than ever before to producers and directors who ask too much. If something isn't safe, it's the right and responsibility of every actor or crew member to yell, 'Cut,' unquote." As for the Twilight Zone movie, all scenes featuring the children were removed in the final cut. Following this incident, the Motion and Entertainment Unit within CAL FIRE Office of the State Fire Marshal was established in order to enforce safety regulations on movie sets in the future. The Screen Actors Guild also established a 24-hour hotline for its members to call should they ever believe a movie scene to be unsafe. And as for Landis, the man that some may argue should never be allowed to set foot on another film set, he would go on to direct a number of successful movies, such as Trading Places, Three Amigos, and Beverly Hills Cop 3, despite the horrendous tragedy that some would argue he caused. Thank you all, as always, for listening to another episode of Hasty History. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we encourage you to check out some of our full-length episodes of #History, which we drop weekly during our regular seasons. A massive thank you, as always, to my handsome and gracious husband for editing this episode. If you have suggestions for more Hasty History topics, please send them our way at #history1865@gmail.com or on our website at #history-pod.com. We want to tailor these Hasty History episodes to you, so be sure to drop us a line on any topic you love or want to learn more about. Make sure also to follow us on Instagram at #history_podcast, where we post lots of extras, including behind the scenes of recording, drink recipes, and so much more. You can also check us out online at #history-pod.com for all sources used to put together this episode. Thank you all so much. Stay safe out there, and we will catch you next time.